Shalom, my friends. I'm about to say something that's going to make you uncomfortable, and honestly, you might get angry with me for saying it. But I need to say it anyway because this truth has the power to change your life completely, or it can stay hidden and you can continue suffering for the next 10, 20, or 30 years. Here it is. The reason you're broke, lonely, and unfulfilled has almost nothing to do with bad luck, the economy, or the people around you. It has everything to do with one fundamental pattern in your life that you refuse to see. You're about to discover what that pattern is, and when you do, you won't be able to unsee it. This pattern is so obvious once you understand it that you'll wonder how you missed it your entire life. And the worst part, nobody wants to tell you the truth because the truth makes you uncomfortable, and uncomfortable truths don't get likes, shares, or followers. But I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you the truth, even if it costs me. Most people watching this video live in a state of denial. They blame their boss for their lack of money. They blame the dating apps for their loneliness. They blame society for their lack of purpose. They blame their parents for their trauma. They blame bad timing for their failures. But here's what I've observed after years of studying successful people, broken people, rich people, and poor people. The people who blame externals stay exactly where they are, and the people who take radical responsibility for their internal patterns transform their lives completely. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't toxic optimism. This is the actual pattern that separates people who build thriving lives from people who suffer continuously. And the shocking part? You already know this is true. Deep down, you know that the problem is internal. You just don't want to face it because facing it means you have to change, and change is terrifying. So you stay comfortable in your suffering instead of being uncomfortable during your transformation. In the next 7 sections, I'm going to reveal the exact pattern that's destroying your finances, your relationships, and your future. And more importantly, I'm going to show you the specific steps to break that pattern starting today. This isn't theoretical. I'm going to give you actionable systems that you can implement in the next 24 hours that will begin to shift your entire trajectory. Some of this will feel harsh. Some of this will feel true in a way that makes you want to close this video. Don't, because on the other side of this discomfort is the person you're capable of becoming. The person with financial freedom, the person with deep, meaningful relationships, the person with purpose and direction. That person is waiting for you, but you have to be willing to face this truth first. The first thing you need to understand is that you are actively sabotaging yourself, and you're doing it so smoothly that you don't even realize it's happening. This isn't about willpower or discipline. This is about unconscious patterns that run in the background like malware on your computer. Every time you're about to make a positive move in your life, about to approach that person, about to start that business, about to set a boundary, something inside you stops you. A voice whispers, "You're not ready." They'll reject you. You'll fail anyway. Who do you think you are? This isn't your intuition protecting you. This is your programming protecting you from the risk of failure. And the cost is everything you actually want in life. The tragic part is that this programming was installed by people who loved you, your parents, your teachers, your community, and they installed it because they were afraid of failure, so they taught you to be afraid too. Here's the mechanism. When you experience a failure or rejection early in life, your brain creates a protective pattern to ensure you never experience that pain again. So it makes you procrastinate on the important project so you can blame time instead of ability. It makes you find reasons to reject people before they can reject you. It makes you spend money frivolously so you don't have to face the anxiety of building actual wealth. It makes you stay in bad relationships because the pain you know is safer than the pain of the unknown. This isn't weakness. This is your brain doing its job. It's protecting you from pain. But the protection is costing you your future. The most devastating part? You've become so skilled at rationalizing these self-sabotage patterns that you've created an entire narrative about why your life is what it is. You're not rich because the system is rigged. You're not in a relationship because there are no good people left. You're not successful because I'm just not a successful type of person. These narratives are protection mechanisms, and they're working perfectly. They're protecting you from having to take responsibility and face the terrifying possibility that your life could be completely different if you made different choices. The way to break this pattern is not positive affirmations or motivation. That's just treating the symptom. The way to break it is to become aware of it in real time. The next time you're about to take action towards something you want and you feel resistance, pause. Don't push through the resistance blindly. Instead, get curious. What am I afraid of right now? What failure am I protecting myself from? Just by asking the question, you start to dismantle the unconscious pattern. You bring it into consciousness where you have power over it. Once you see the pattern, you can choose to act anyway. That's when everything changes. That's when the person you're supposed to become starts to emerge. Your self-sabotage has been keeping you safe, but safe and small is not the same as successful and fulfilled. The second pattern that's destroying your life is victim mentality, and it's so normalized in society that most people don't even recognize they're trapped in it. Victim mentality sounds like this: my parents messed me up, so I can't be healthy. The economy is bad, so I can't get wealthy. People are shallow, so I can't find real love. I have bad luck, so I can't succeed. Every single one of these statements contains a hidden truth. You are powerless. And here's the sick part. If you're powerless, then you're also blameless. You don't have to take responsibility. You can just suffer and be the victim, and somehow that feels better than being responsible. But this is a trap, and it's stealing your life from you, one day at a time. Here's what separates people who transform their lives from people who suffer indefinitely: the ability to take radical responsibility. Not blame, responsibility. These are completely different. Blame says, it's not my fault. Responsibility says, I'm going to respond by taking action. The most powerful position in the universe is not being right. It's being responsible. Because the moment you take full responsibility for your life, you reclaim your power. You're no longer waiting for the system to change, the people to change, or your circumstances to change. You're changing. And when you change, everything changes around you. This isn't victim blaming. This is the revelation that you have more power than you thought you did. But claiming that power requires you to stop being the victim. And most people aren't willing to do that because victim identity has certain benefits. It gets sympathy, it gets attention, it justifies inaction. But the cost is your future. Here's the practical shift. Stop telling stories where you're the victim. Start telling stories where you're the protagonist who is taking action despite the obstacles. Instead of, I can't find love because people are toxic, say, I'm going to become the kind of person that attracts healthy people, and I'm going to learn how to recognize healthy relationships. Instead of, I can't get wealthy because of the system, say, I'm going to learn financial principles, develop valuable skills, and build systems that create income regardless of economic conditions. Notice the difference? One takes your power away, one takes your power back. And the crazy part? When you start speaking and thinking this way, your nervous system believes you. Your brain starts looking for evidence that supports this new narrative. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. People who could have helped you now seem obvious. The universe hasn't changed, but your perception of your ability to act has fundamentally shifted. That's when your life begins to transform. The third pattern that most people don't see until it's too late is what I call the compromise pattern. This is where small, seemingly insignificant choices accumulate over months and years into a completely different life than the one you intended. Let me give you examples. You decide to sleep in 1 extra hour instead of going to the gym. It's just one morning, so no big deal. But one morning becomes 5 mornings a week, and before you know it, you haven't worked out in 3 months. You decide to scroll social media for 10 minutes. But 10 minutes becomes 1 hour, and that 1 hour per day compounds into 365 hours per year. That's 15 full 24-hour days of your life spent scrolling. You decide to have just one bad eating day, but one day becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your lifestyle. You decide to postpone that difficult conversation with your partner, But postponement becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes resentment, and resentment becomes the slow death of the relationship. These aren't big dramatic failures. These are 1,000 small compromises that add up to a life you didn't intend. The reason this pattern is so dangerous is that it's invisible while it's happening. When you make one bad choice, it feels insignificant, but you're not aware of the compound effect. You're not aware that every small compromise is a vote for Doe Chu you're becoming. Every time you choose the easy thing over the right thing, you're voting to become the kind of person who chooses the easy thing. Every time you avoid responsibility, you're becoming more avoidant. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you're eroding your self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of everything: wealth, relationships, success, happiness. When you don't trust yourself to follow through, you stay small. You don't take big risks. You don't believe you can change. The compromises have broken your internal integrity. The terrifying part? Most people aren't aware this is happening until they look back at their life at age 40, 50, or 60, and they don't recognize the person they've become. They wonder how they ended up in a job they hate, in a relationship they've checked out of, in a body they don't recognize, with friendships they've neglected. The answer is 1,000 small compromises. The reversal of this pattern is to become obsessed with integrity in the small things. This isn't about being perfect. It's about making your yes mean something and your no mean something. When you say you're going to the gym, you go. When you say you'll check your phone at 9 p.m., you actually do it. When you make a commitment to someone, you keep it. When you set a boundary, you maintain it. These seem like small things, but they're revolutionary. Every time you do what you said you'd do, you're voting for the kind of person you're becoming. Someone trustworthy, someone disciplined, someone who has integrity. And that person attracts opportunities, attracts relationships, attracts wealth. The compound effect works both ways. Small compromises compound into a wasted life. Small acts of integrity compound into a powerful life. And the choice between them is literally happening multiple times per day, in decisions so small that most people don't even notice they're making them. But you're noticing now, and from this point forward, every choice matters. The fourth pattern is one that almost nobody wants to acknowledge because it operates on such a deep level. You're addicted to being needed. This shows up as people-pleasing, overgiving, taking on everyone else's problems, sacrificing your own needs, and staying in situations where you're required but not valued. On the surface, this looks like kindness and generosity. But underneath, it's a dependency system that's slowly destroying your life and the lives of people around you. Here's how it works. When you're needed, you matter. When you're solving someone else's problems, you feel valuable. When you're sacrificing for others, you feel noble. The sick part is that this creates a relationship where the other person becomes dependent on you, and you become dependent on being needed by them. And the moment you stop being needed, the moment you set boundaries or put your own needs first, the entire relationship destabilizes. And that terrifies you because you've built your entire sense of self-worth on being needed. This pattern shows up everywhere. In romantic relationships, you date people with problems so you can fix them, and the moment they start healing, you lose interest or they lose interest in you. In family dynamics, you're the person everyone calls for help, the person who manages everyone's crises, the person who cancels their own plans constantly, and nobody ever asks about your life. In friendships, you're the giver, always, and you're secretly resentful that nobody gives to you, but you can't ask for help because your identity is wrapped up in being the strong one. In work, you overextend yourself constantly, take on everyone else's projects, and then wonder why you're exhausted, underpaid, and overlooked for promotion. The common thread in all of this? You're addicted to being needed. And that addiction is costing you your health, your financial independence, your self-respect, and ironically, it's preventing real intimacy in your relationships. The antidote is absolutely terrifying, which is why most people never do it. You have to become willing to not be needed. You have to set boundaries and be okay with people being disappointed. You have to say no to things that aren't aligned with your purpose. You have to prioritize your own needs without feeling guilty. You have to allow other people to experience the consequences of their own choices instead of rescuing them. And here's the part that seems contradictory but is absolutely true. When you stop being addicted to being needed, your relationships become deeper, more authentic, and more sustainable. Because now you're showing up from a place of choice, not compulsion. You're giving from abundance, not desperation. And the people in your life stop being people you're trying to fix and start being people you genuinely enjoy. This is revolutionary. This is also why most people never do it, because it requires going through a period where people are upset with you, disappointed in you, or leave your life entirely. But the people who survive that transition end up living completely different lives. Free lives. The fifth pattern that's keeping you stuck is one that's actually become celebrated in modern culture, which makes it even more dangerous. You're consuming massive amounts of information without taking any corresponding action. You watch motivational videos, you read self-help books, you listen to podcasts about wealth building, you consume content about relationships, health, success, and spirituality, and yet your life remains exactly the same. Why? Because knowledge without action is actually worse than ignorance, because it makes you feel like you're doing something when you're not doing anything at all. You feel productive because you're learning, but you're not actually changing. And the sick part is that there's an endless stream of content creators who are happy to keep you in this loop because your consumption of their content is what makes them money. Here's the brutal truth. You don't need more information. You probably know exactly what you need to do to change your life. You know you need to eat better, exercise, manage your money, have difficult conversations, take calculated risks, and develop skills. You know this intellectually, but you're not doing it. And then you consume more information hoping that maybe this book or this video will finally be the thing that motivates you to take action. It won't. Because the problem was never knowledge. The problem is that you're not willing to experience the discomfort that change requires. Change is uncomfortable. It requires doing things you're not good at. It requires failing in front of people. It requires admitting you were wrong. It requires saying no to people you care about. It requires getting up at 5 a.m. when you want to sleep. It requires sitting with difficult emotions instead of distracting yourself. Most people would rather stay where they are and watch videos about change than actually experience the discomfort of changing. Here's what separates people who actually transform. They take small actions immediately. They don't wait until they've consumed all the information. They don't wait until they feel ready. They do one thing. They join the gym today. They have the difficult conversation today. They apply for the job today. They reach out to the person today. They start the business today. They set the boundary today. And then they do the next thing tomorrow. And the thing after that, the day after. And months later, they look back and realize they're a completely different person. They didn't have better information than you. They just had worse information, but they acted on it anyway. And action, even imperfect action, changes everything. The problem isn't what you know. The problem is what you're willing to do. And that's actually good news because it means you have more power than you thought. It's not about finding more information. It's about becoming someone who follows through. The sixth pattern that most people never even recognize is how attached they are to their identity and their story. You've built an identity around being a certain type of person. I'm the broke one in the family. I'm the unlucky one. I'm not a relationship person. I'm bad with money. I'm introverted, so I can't network. I'm too old to change. I'm just not talented. These aren't facts. These are stories. But you've told them so many times to yourself and other people that they've become your identity. And the terrifying thing is that your brain will do everything in its power to keep your behavior consistent with your identity because consistency feels safe and coherent to you. Think about how this works. If your identity is I'm bad with money, then when you get a raise, what happens? You unconsciously find ways to spend it so you end up back in your familiar financial situation. If your identity is I'm not a relationship person, then when someone genuinely interested appears, you find reasons to push them away or sabotage the relationship. If your identity is I'm not talented, then when you have an opportunity to showcase your skills, you either don't show up or you self-sabotage so that the results stay consistent with your identity. Your brain is literally preventing you from becoming a different person because being a different person would violate your core identity, and identity violations feel threatening at a neurological level. This is why people can have every tool for success, the information, the opportunity, the resources, and still stay exactly where they are because they're not willing to violate their identity. Here's the liberation. Your identity is not fixed. Your identity is a story you've been telling yourself, and like any story, you can edit it. Not through positive affirmations, those are just fighting fire with fire. You edit it through actions that are inconsistent with the old story. Every time you do something that violates your old identity, you're voting for a new identity. Every time you make money and keep it, instead of spending it unconsciously, you're voting for the identity of someone who builds wealth. Every time you have a difficult conversation, instead of avoiding it, you're voting for the identity of someone who has integrity. Every time you show up when you're scared, you're voting for the identity of someone who's brave. These individual actions seem small, but they're rewriting the story your brain believes about who you are. And once your identity starts to shift, your entire life starts to shift, because you'll unconsciously start making choices that are consistent with your new identity. This is how transformation actually works. Shalom, my friends. You now understand the 7 patterns that are keeping you broke, lonely, and unfulfilled. These aren't character flaws. These are systems that are running in the background of your life, and the moment you become aware of them, you can start to dismantle them. You understand that you've been sabotaging yourself unconsciously. You understand that victim mentality is stealing your power. You understand that small compromises compound into a wasted life. You understand that your addiction to being needed is destroying your relationships and your health. You understand that knowledge without action is worse than useless. You understand that your identity is a story you've been telling yourself, and that story can be rewritten. And you understand that without a clear vision, you're just running away instead of running toward. These aren't theoretical concepts. These are patterns that are active in your life right now, in this moment, determining what kind of day you have and what kind of life you're building. But here's the crucial thing. Understanding these patterns is not enough. Everyone understands them intellectually. The question is, are you going to be someone who understands these patterns and stays exactly where you are? Or are you going to be someone who understands these patterns and acts? Because understanding without action is just more of the same cycle. You came here expecting me to give you motivation, and maybe I did inspire you, but inspiration without follow-through is actually toxic because it makes you feel good temporarily and then leaves you exactly where you started. So I'm not going to give you motivation. I'm going to give you a challenge. Starting tomorrow, pick one of these 7 patterns that resonates most strongly with you, the one that makes you uncomfortable, the one that hits closest to home, and decide that you're going to break that pattern this week. Not eventually. This week, not perfectly. Just break it. One action, one conversation, one decision, one boundary. Just do it. If you do this, if you actually take action on what you've learned, your life will be different in 30 days. Not dramatically different, but noticeably different. In 90 days, the changes will be undeniable. In a year, you won't recognize yourself. The person you were a year ago was running on these 7 patterns, completely unaware of what was controlling them. But you're aware now. You can't unsee this. You can't go back to unconsciousness. So you have a choice. You can ignore this, watch the next video, and stay on the exact same trajectory you've been on. Or you can do the work, break the patterns, and become the person you're actually capable of becoming. The choice is yours. But choose consciously, because every day, with every small choice, you're voting for the person you're becoming. Make sure you're voting for the person you actually want to be. Shalom.